Previously on Lost.
If the last two were MGS3, this is MGS4, the really bloated and meandering one. Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see for sure. Oh, you poor naive soul. "2015 has been an odd year. You saw some companies get away with some pretty awful stuff, while yet others were finally being critiqued after years of being free to do whatever they wanted. The critical weight of Assassin's Creed is starting to crush the franchise. The colossal muck-up of the Arkham Knight PC port may have helped in creating Steam refunds, a huge boon for consumers which contrasts to how awful Greenlight has become. But for me personally, it was the year where the direct sequel to my absolute most played game of all time was released, and was a grave disappointment, whereas a visual novel franchise where the villain is a teddy bear came out of nowhere and stole my heart. So yeah, interesting year. But even though I played all the big games I wanted to play, I still feel like I missed out on so much. It's quite a packed year when you can say that the mimetic behemoth known as Undertale nearly passed you by. And that's really what this loosely tied together trilogy was all about. It wasn't just about playing through these games in a desperate attempt to dodge spoilers, it was also a means of stimulating my playtime to actually make me play some of the more decorated games in a timely manner. Otherwise I might have just been playing the fecking Turok HD remaster over Christmas. By the way, yes, I will be reviewing that later on. In any case, MGS5. This game has been begging for me to play it for a while. I mean, it's the last Metal Gear Solid game ever to be made by Kojima. The grand finale to a series of awesome, incredible... Okay, I think Guns of the Patriots is actually pretty bad. But it is one of the most decorated series in gaming and has arguably made great strides improving games as a legitimate means of storytelling. You know, because of moments like this. I mean, really, I had to play this, but, well, let's just say I'm glad I didn't have to pay for it. Full disclosure, I only played Peace Walker for like 2 hours, and I haven't touched Ground Zeroes. I was going to, I swore I got it on PlayStation Plus, but whatever, I've read several synopses and reviews of both, I think I get the gist. So after being blown up by Paz at the end of Ground Zeroes by that same plot point in the Hillary Clinton episode of South Park, Big Boss is put into a coma for 9 years. After waking up we have to name him. Sure, why not have two characters named Kaz in the same game? I'm sure they'll be as annoying as each other too. Afterwards, the trailer from back when this game was just The Phantom Pain kicks in. You escape the hospital, meet up with Ocelot, head to Afghanistan, rescue Miller, and have to rebuild Mother Base all over again under the new outfit of Diamond Dogs. Haha, I get it. Alright, so what's Boss's motivation for doing all of this? Boy, is that the million-dollar question. Pretty much all of my complaints about the story are ones you've likely heard a million times. It's like bitching about the poor mixing of Metallica's And Justice for All. But why not add my voice to the pile? MGS's defining asset up to this point was its judicious use of cutscenes. This is why I hated 4 so much. The cutscenes literally outnumbered the gameplay sections past Chapter 2. The ending of that is still so ridiculous to me. You go back to Shadow Moses in Chapter 4 and you can't even do anything there. The Phantom Pain must be Kojima's way of saying, because beyond that, or a reason that can be attributed to the sordid development of the game, I cannot see why they decided to make so few big story moments. And I'm not just saying there aren't many cutscenes, I'm saying there aren't many big beats to actively drive the story along. Big Boss seems to get back to making his PMC just because he's told to. He actually has so few lines, I'm wondering if it's because Kiefer Sutherland costs that much. But it leads to the main character of the game feeling almost completely detached from the world he's in. He doesn't even have the energy or presence to be actively apathetic like a Discworld protagonist or something. Most of the characterization is seemingly used in Miller, and the central theme of revenge seems to fit him to a T. But it means he is both incredibly annoying and an idiotic hypocrite who's ready to throw his base ideals out the window at any time in the name of revenge. That's all he wants to do. He wants to get back at Cypher and Skullface for destroying Militaire Sans Frontières, and he's just incredibly obnoxious. Anytime he's on screen, he just seems to butt heads with the commander but back down because he's Big Boss. I guess. For Kaz, who consistently makes this face, is less annoying than this one. I could go on about how many times Miller is annoying, how pants on head ridiculous the entire setup of Quiet is, how it contradicts the already silly canon of the series, and how it acknowledges it, how many ridiculously implausible references to future games there are, but doing that would be looking at the trees so long you forget to see the problem forest, and that is the overall issue of momentum the Phantom Pain carries. You see, no cutscenes doesn't just mean you don't get a lot of neat looking movies to look at, it also means the main method for telling the story is siloed off to these tapes you get at the end of missions, and they're really just too fragmented in delivery to be a worthy substitute. Really, sitting and listening to tapes, even on horse rides to your next objective, isn't an involved enough process considering just how much goes on in the world of Metal Gear, although it fits the expository process of Kojima's writing eerily well, but at the end of the day they just feel like a crutch for what they couldn't afford to or chose not to animate. Like there's this one recorded conversation between Big Boss and Otacon's dad about cloning, which is pivotal to the overall story, but it's just a tape. No gravitas, no weight, it's just another conversation. So there's no sense of ultimate delivery by either the writers or the actors that makes you sit up and pay attention, and some tapes are handed out so randomly they just feel obtrusive. Most of the time you just luck into a big cutscene because Miller will randomly call you up after a mission to head back to base, so you're doing these rather meaningless missions in the hopes of getting one of those. This feeds into another big problem way later into the game, but I guess I should actually talk about the game. Alright, so open world stealth. Sounds like a terrible idea, right? Most stealth games up to this point, including prior MGSs, have been about cloistered areas for a more directed experience, because otherwise they're privy to a lot of idiotic moments. AI is still one of the hardest aspects of game development, and the difficulty in getting AI with lots of little variables over huge spaces is, I imagine, why even games like Deus Ex leave encounters to a few rooms per squadron. So the question is, can MGS5 make more open stealth liberating while keeping the challenge and tension but allowing for the hijinks a greater sense of scale brings? And my answer is yes. Kind of. The biggest problem with making MGS so open is that the AI still seems to have the vision as back in the days of top-down. For some reason they find it hard to look past 40 feet. But just about everything else in direct regards to the gameplay is good. The open map design means not only can missions and areas be approached in different ways, but that it feels like it's your way almost every time. The relative fluidity of the controls is impressive considering the uneven terrain of both areas of the game. Even if the cover system is broken, it's hard to describe the visceral joy of stealth when compared to shooting, but I will say that although few things are as frustrating as one guard ruining your perfect run at the last minute, so too a few things as perfect as pulling it off. It's just that sense of challenge mixed with the sense of liberating catharsis when you either plan or improvise a great stealth run, especially in a setting as open as this. This is the same as I said for Far Cry 4's Outposts, but MGS is still going to be the king by legacy alone. Both the franchise's standing and the open design makes for probably the most flexible stealth game yet. You can order Mother Base to develop lots of different weapons and items, and combined with the buddies you can take on missions, means your loadout will rarely be completely static. And something that justifies this and gives the game direly needed variety is that your enemies are reactive over the long term. You have to use a fault and recovery system to capture soldiers, but they'll eventually get the idea to shoot the balloons before they take off. They also might wear heavier armor and carry bigger guns, making your tranquilizer less and less useful, and incentivizing avoidance or close combat rather than long-range assaults. The problem with the gameplay is everything else in between those bouts of stealth. Checkpoints and mission starting points are ages away from each other for no discernible reason, which leads to a lot of running around from place to place. The times you have to wait for a helicopter to pick you up or drop you off, when you're waiting for a supply drop, when you have to run a kilometer across the desert because God forbid you take the sniper with you on a stealth mission instead of a horse. There's just so much doddering around, and this is just for one mission apiece. The grander picture just amplifies this problem to an absurd degree. Between the missions being meaningless, long, and altogether samey, and there being very, very little in the way of direct story momentum, means to actively play the Phantom Pain is just a drag. The frustrations of dying to that one guard add up when the checkpoint is ages away for no reason, and the missions having no bearing on your current situation meant I felt like I wasn't any closer to thwarting Skullface at the beginning of the game than by the time I was actually there. And all the base management and R&D business might be entirely justified, even necessary in light of the open setting, but managing the multiple time bars for dispatch missions and platform construction and being able to actually equip a sniper rifle worth a damn, it's It's just aggravating. I have never yelled, "I don't care!" more at the TV than when I was playing the Phantom Pain. I really hope I'm emphasizing how much of a drag the entire experience was. Individually, these missions are alright, but I could barely stand to play the game for more than 2 hours at a time, which meant I was doing like 3 missions a day. A simple test I have is if I have to turn on my iTunes and play random playlists just to keep trudging through a game. And boy, did the Phantom Pain have me reaching for my death grips. Now, it's no surprise by now that I love Danganronpa. I think it's brilliant. I might even replay it if it gets that Steam release. But let's be real, at the end of the day, all you're doing in Danganronpa is sitting and reading. And these games are like 20 hours apiece, but I was still thoroughly glued to my seat playing both, including the second, which I criticised heavily, because they have a sense of tension and excitement that supersedes their deliberately slow style. Some would say I'm comparing apples to oranges, but me personally, I think if this long visual novel series has a better ROI and more moments of excitement than Metal Gear Solid, something is wrong. I came damn close to pulling a Lightning Returns and just looking up the ending, because I didn't want to actually play the game anymore, and there were only 2 things that kept me going. 1, I refused to let the game beat me. 2, this was going to be the last MGS I'd ever have to play. I mean, I've seen every other mainline MGS to the end. What sort of gamer would I be if I didn't properly finish it? Bear that last statement in mind very well. It will come in handy. So here I am at the climax of the game, and to everyone who played this, I have a question. Why does this robot have a flamethrower for a dick? No, I want to know, why does this robot have a flamethrower for a dick? And why did this moment of overacting
Such a lust for revenge?
overshadow the fact that this robot has a dick flamethrower? And I'm serious, there's this shot meant to frame it like a dick. Anyway, we blow up Mantis's robot, finish off Skullface, and it looks like the day is saved, once and for all. And then Big Boss formed out of heaven and... wait. That was just chapter 1? All that running around doing odd jobs as part of the main story just for our glimpse at our heroes and villains doing hero and villain things, that was all just chapter 1? Well, fuck, I hate to say how long chapter 2 is. Yeah, see, this is my problem with the story, such as it is. Right here. Just this one monologue of Miller saying he still feels the need for revenge and strength. That's your only direct motivation going forward. It's someone else telling you they feel unsatisfied. And when you open up your mission list to see what there is to do... oh no. Oh no. Repeats. Okay, truth be told, I was told time and time again by pretty much all of my friends to expect the game to take a nosedive at this point, and isn't that kind of sad? This is meant to be the last big hurrah of one of the most venerated game series of our time, and the biggest things it's going to be remembered for are the ridiculous lengths Konami has gone to distance Kojima from as many properties as they can, and that the second half of the game demonstrates a disproportionate lack of time or effort. Honestly, maybe even both. Do I really have to explain myself? Half the missions you do to advance the story here are literally harder versions of old missions. Do I have to explain what's wrong with this and why it makes the pacing even worse? It's quite a feat to make a game that feels both hollow and bloated, but recycling already overdone missions to extend the game time? That'd do it. Literally every problem I have with the game gets worse here. The enemies getting tougher might make things more interesting, but also 1,000 times more frustrating. The total stealth missions are way harder when you can't headshot anyone. The cutscene appearances are even more sporadic, and because most missions are repeated, the debriefings are all pointless. There were several times where even though I beat every main mission that was even remotely possible, I still couldn't advance the story, and it's just obvious how much this is a problem, because if you look online, no one has a specific answer on how to advance and unlock several missions. They just might happen under certain prerequisites, or maybe those prerequisites mean nothing. Who knows? Yeah, occasionally, linearity has its benefits. The previous MGS mainline titles, all being hyper-directed action movie-ish games, has seen some flack for excessive cutscenes and not being quite as open as they should be, but the Phantom Pain hits some sort of critical mass with its watery story progression. Again, no one knows how to really unlock those final missions. The very last mission of the game only appeared when I clicked to listen to every tape. It was just like, poof, and it was there. And I mean, hey, the gameplay is still good enough, and the missions individually aren't too bad, right? Well, a handful are okay. The first mission where you have to find all your weapons in a field, rather than picking your loadout, gave the map a new perspective. And the missions where you get a game over upon detection are good on the simple grounds that they reliably test your understanding of the game. But most of the others are ridiculous. There are 2 boss battles and a few mini-boss skirmishes with the skull unit throughout the game, and included in these repeats are all those battles on extreme difficulty, including ones against Quiet and Sahelanthropus. Fox Productions have to be off their fucking rocker if they expect most people to reliably do these. If I had to fight these skulls at the airport on hard mode just to keep playing, I would have stopped dead. Who the hell do they think I am, the Juggernaut? But whether it was through attrition, skill, or sheer luck, I made it to the end game. You rescue Quiet from a Soviet camp and you have to fight off this ridiculous army before you can even think about extraction. And you know, I realised the final battle was meant to be hard and that maybe my anger at the game was affecting my skill level. But if the only way to reliably take care of these tanks is to stand behind a building and call in an airstrike twice, re-evaluate your game balance. This took me an hour. Feel free to laugh, I don't care, I was so over this game by this point. And after that, the game ends the only way it possibly can, with a complete retread of the very introduction of the game. I'm not going to comment on the actual spoiler there. All I can really say is, once again, it actually isn't that hard to figure out if you pay enough attention to the intro. And then you get a bunch of tapes, which I didn't care to listen to, and the plot point about Mantis and Liquid stealing Sarcophagus or whatever just disappears into thin air. Actually, there's this bonus movie on the collector's edition disc that explains what it's about, but I haven't seen it yet, because when I saw this slide at the beginning of it, I just laughed. It's stupid. Did they expect to fool people at all in the game itself? It's obvious from the way there are only 2 locations, neither of which are that big, being expected to fill a ridiculous amount of game time, and the way Chapter 2's big story moments just appear and disappear sans good timing, that this game is not done. But honestly, even if they had made more areas with more actual new missions, I doubt I would have enjoyed it a whole lot more. Chapter 1 was still nauseating to play through, even though it practically blows Chapter 2 out of the water. I mean, I'm just at a loss really. I try not to call people out because I think individual tastes should be cherished and everyone has their own opinion, but how can anyone call this game good? To call it awful would probably be unfair to the base game's mechanics, but to call this game good would be to grossly underplay the value of decent pacing, because seriously, you just repeat missions for the second half of the game and you have no idea what unlocks what. It sucks. It just sucks! To me, the most fun of the Phantom Pain was the Phantom Pain, like the trailer in 2012 with Moby Dick Studios and Joaquin Mogren. That interview still makes me laugh. I'm sure most games have more troubled developments than are let on, but it goes without saying the Phantom Pain has one of the most visibly interesting. I find it amazing how quickly Konami has, through this and the batshit craziness of the Silent Hill franchise, completely supplanted Ubisoft as the most hated publisher in a short amount of time, and for seemingly performing these actions for reasons beyond financial and commercial ones. Like, this is the real gripping Cold War drama, not the game that gets the Bowie album reference wrong, and so ends the spoilerific trilogy. It's kind of sad that I only tangibly enjoyed one of these games, and even then it wasn't great, but I don't regret playing any of them. Now I can say I have them all under my belt. I've proven to myself I can dodge spoilers if I truly put my heart to it. That is to say, if I don't run into schmuckbait comics like I did for Star Wars. I'm also glad I've been able to stick to a somewhat timely schedule, so this whole trilogy didn't seem completely trite, and there's something else I'm glad for. You! Whether this is the first video of mine you've watched, or you've been subscribed for a while, thank you. It makes my heart swell seeing the feedback I get, even if it leads to a disproportionate amount of dislikes. And for real, I'm gonna make a way more concerted effort to actually reply to comments. Unless you're just saying the review is good. No one wants to see the creator meaninglessly go thanks to one of those comments. It gets kinda spammy. But I'm happy I've gone from the person who just farts out awkward reviews of uncool games like Dust, and has developed an actual sense of charisma. Unless I'm on camera. I doubt I will ever do that again. So, what's down the line? A review of Turok HD and a long review of Persona 4 are definitely in the works. And a video on the entire Just Cause trilogy is very likely. Beyond that, we might have to wait and see depending on what comes out. I actually hope 2016 isn't as hectic. Maybe I can actually get time to play everything I want then. On that note, I guess the only thing left to add is Happy New Year! Alright, so just to start off with, because it seems like this is the deal breaker for a lot of people, no, I don't think the characterization is that bad. But yes, Chloe says hella, and after that I think Gwen Stefani might stop suing Activision to take a crack at Don't Nod. A long ass fucking time ago, humans and monsters lived in peace, then they didn't, and you're a human child who fell into the world of monsters, and go! Firing up a new game, I decided to model my character after Gundam Tanaka. And by that I mean I picked the closest preset face and gave him a scar. You got these two girls, supposedly comprised of ultimate despair, who are both kind of oddball in their own ways, and they have to learn to get along in order to survive.